that they just went to every one of them looking for me. They said, the paperwork said the 24th, that I had to be there the 28th, and then it was the 27th. I said, I can't make it there, that's tomorrow.
He claimed that he had video footage. He also claimed to have the real Kim Porter memoir.
Let's dive right into one of the most explosive celebrity scandals of our time. One that's ripping through the music industry and leaving a trail of shocked fans, betrayed insiders, and shaken up reputations in its wake. Sean Diddy Combs, the man who once called himself the bad boy for life, now finds himself at the center of a courtroom drama so scandalous it sounds like something ripped straight out of a Hollywood thriller. But make no mistake, this isn't fiction. The allegations, the evidence, the high-profile players, this one has all the makings of a career-ending catastrophe.
You're hearing about all these videos with celebrities, not going to be part of the criminal case. And the
Cassie video.
The Cassie video is going to be part.
Right.
We're going to get to that in a minute with the jury. But what we did was, number one, we showed them the prosecution's case from one of our documentaries. And then we showed them the defense from the current documentary.
Picture this, a courtroom packed with reporters, lawyers squaring off like gladiators, and Diddy himself, once the untouchable mogul of music, fashion, and culture, reduced to a man fighting for his freedom. His perfectly curated image is unraveling in real time, replaced by headlines that paint him as the architect of a sprawling and deeply disturbing operation. This trial isn't just about one man's alleged crimes. It's a spectacle that's pulling back the curtain on the dark underbelly of fame and power, and trust us, the details are far messier than anything you've seen in a tabloid. The prosecution isn't holding back. They've painted Diddy as the ringleader of what they're calling a criminal enterprise. That's right. This isn't just about personal failings or bad decisions. The government claims Diddy orchestrated years of manipulation, coercion, and exploitation, all while hiding behind the glitz and glamour of his multi-million-dollar empire. And the evidence? It's jaw-dropping. We're talking about disturbing footage, shocking testimony, and allegations that span decades. But it's not just the charges that are turning heads. It's the web of celebrity connections, the whispers of cover-ups, and the sheer audacity of it all. Let's start with the infamous surveillance video. This clip, leaked to the media and now a central piece of evidence, shows Diddy in a moment of sheer, unfiltered aggression. The footage, reportedly taken at a luxury hotel, captures him chasing down his then-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, in a hallway. What happens next is hard to watch. He grabs her, throws her to the ground, and even drags her by her clothing. It's the kind of video that makes you stop in your tracks. And while Diddy has since apologized, calling his actions inexcusable, the damage is done. This isn't something you can sweep under the rug, not when the whole world has seen it.
There has been no profit motive involved at all. The last word is profit.
He's already rich.
So whether or not he had the freak-offs or he did whatever.
Follow the money.
Well, there is no money
Exactly.
to follow. I mean, the freak-offs aren't okay, the way in which I read it, it's not an illegal business. A freak-off is a freak, or whatever these things are, right?
Wrong, that's what I look.
But the profit, that last word actually got my attention, because I was like.
But here's where it gets even more twisted. Diddy's legal team has tried to argue that the video was altered, yes, altered. And they've gone after the media outlet that first aired it. They've claimed the footage was manipulated to exaggerate what happened. Now, if that sounds like a desperate move, you're not alone. The judge wasn't buying it either, ruling that the video is admissible in court. And let's be real, if the footage is as authentic as it seems, it's a damning piece of evidence that could sway even the most impartial jury. Of course, Diddy's team isn't sitting quietly. They have crafted a defense that's equal parts audacious and baffling. According to his lawyers, the so-called freak-offs at the center of the allegations weren't acts of coercion. They were consensual. They've painted Diddy as a man with a unique lifestyle, one that might raise eyebrows but isn't criminal. They're calling him a swinger, someone who participated in consensual adult activities with willing participants. It's a bold strategy, but let's face it, it's a hard sell when you're up against the kind of evidence the prosecution is bringing to the table.
I think one thing that I haven't heard said at this table yet is bribery. So he probably promised a lot of these people either fame, fortune, riches. Whether or not he delivered, I doubt it. But that's another matter entirely, right? So that's obviously, if he incentivized some of these people in order to participate in all of these things, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Is that a definition, or does that fit a definition of coercion in any way, bribery?
And speaking of evidence, let's talk about the raids. Earlier this year, federal agents stormed Diddy's homes in Los Angeles and Miami. What they reportedly found has only fueled the fire. Personal items, records, and other materials were seized, and prosecutors claim these items are tied directly to the allegations. The imagery alone, agents hauling evidence from the opulent mansions of one of hip-hop's biggest names, is enough to make anyone's jaw drop. It's a visual that screams, no one is too big to fall. But the real bombshells are the testimonies. Cassie Ventura is expected to take the stand, and her account alone could decide the fate of this case. She's already described years of control, abuse, and manipulation, claims that align disturbingly well with the prosecution's narrative. And she's not the only one. Multiple witnesses, some of whom are being allowed to testify anonymously, are stepping forward with stories that paint a chilling picture of what allegedly went on behind closed doors. These aren't just tales of bad relationships or toxic behavior. They're accounts of systemic exploitation that, if proven true, could redefine how we view one of the most powerful figures in entertainment.
The big thing that is really interesting, and it's going to be a big problem for the defense if you look at this mock jury, the Cassie video. He is not being prosecuted for it. That's a state crime in California, and the statute of limitations is run. But I am telling you, that video was thunderous for a bunch of these jurors.
And then there's the list of celebrities who might be dragged into this mess. Names like Ye, Michael B. Jordan, and Kid Cudi have already surfaced not as defendants but as potential witnesses or figures who might be mentioned in testimonies. The sheer star power associated with this trial is unprecedented. It's like watching a real-life drama unfold with A-listers caught in the crossfire. And let's not forget the cultural implications. If the allegations are true, what does it say about an industry that allowed this kind of behavior to go unchecked for so long? But here's the kicker. Diddy isn't just fighting for his freedom. He's fighting to salvage what's left of his legacy. This is a man who built an empire, who turned his name into a brand synonymous with success, luxury, and influence. And now, all of that hangs in the balance. The stakes couldn't be higher, not just for him, but for everyone connected to him. Because make no mistake, this trial isn't just about one man. It's about an entire culture of power, privilege, and the dark secrets that often come with it.
We've talked about the fact that there's sometimes videos or photos or what don't get admitted to a case because they're
overly
prejudicial.
Right. This is getting admitted. Both sides.
It's definitely getting admitted.
Both sides agree. It's going to be admissible. The defense has a hurdle to jump. I will tell you that they vote in the end, and the vote may surprise.
And yet, as explosive as all this is, it feels like we're only scratching the surface. The more you dig into this case, the more questions arise. What else is out there? What haven't we seen? And perhaps most importantly, how far does this really go? And yet, even as the trial barrels forward with no signs of slowing, there's an uneasy sense that the real story might be even darker than what's already come to light. Because here's the thing, for every explosive piece of evidence that's been revealed, whispers of an even deeper, more systemic rot in Diddy's empire continue to bubble up. We're not just talking about incidents confined to his personal life. No, this is starting to look like a calculated, deliberate environment where boundaries didn't just blur, they were bulldozed entirely. Take the inner workings of Bad Boy Records, a label that once stood as a beacon of hip-hop dominance. Behind the platinum plaques and chart-topping hits, insiders are now describing an atmosphere that was less about music and more about control. Former employees are coming forward with stories of a workplace built on fear, where loyalty wasn't just expected, it was demanded at any cost. Staff members reportedly felt trapped, constantly walking on eggshells around a man they describe as unpredictable and capable of turning on anyone who stepped out of line. It wasn't just about doing your job, it was about playing by his rules, no matter how twisted they might be.
You know, there's a short life in
why do you think that is with the creative side?
Well, because losing out money, You got to take. You're going through so much to try and deal with life.
And let's not forget the artists, those golden ticket holders who signed with Bad Boy thinking they'd struck career gold, only to find themselves caught in a web of manipulation. Contracts that seemed like stepping stones to stardom allegedly came with strings attached. Rumors of financial mismanagement, withheld royalties, and relentless pressure to toe the line have haunted the label for years. Some artists have hinted that their careers were quietly sabotaged the moment they dared to question the man in charge. And now, with this trial unfolding, those old whispers are gaining new weight, painting a picture of a mogul who didn't just control his own destiny, he controlled everyone else's too. But if you thought the allegations stopped at the label doors, think again. Because as prosecutors dig deeper, a pattern of behavior is emerging that transcends the music industry entirely. Diddy's lavish parties, once the stuff of celebrity legend, are now being scrutinized under a much harsher light. These weren't just gatherings of the rich and famous. They were meticulously orchestrated affairs where power dynamics were anything but balanced. Guests were allegedly handpicked not just for their star power, but for their willingness to play along with whatever the night demanded. And those who didn't, well, let's just say they weren't invited back.
You are literally, it's an unhealthy space. And so eventually you're going to go too far, you know? Who knows what happened to Philip? Who knows what Heath had to do in order to get to where he was at? There's a lot of things that people do that end up sitting and they can't get over it. And they got to keep getting high, hoping to get it out of their head, you know? But when you lose your man card.
But the question no one seems to be asking loudly enough is, how many people actually benefited from staying quiet? Because let's be honest, in an industry as cutthroat as entertainment, silence often comes with rewards. Some insiders are now hinting that those closest to Diddy, his handlers, his confidants, even his business partners, knew just enough to leverage their positions. They weren't just bystanders, they were enablers, profiting off the chaos while insulating themselves from the fallout. Contracts were signed, opportunities were handed out, and careers were launched, all under the shadow of behavior that should have raised alarm bells. And now, as the trial drags them into the spotlight, you can almost hear the sound of bridges burning. It's not just about who stayed silent, it's about who actively protected him. There are whispers of backroom deals, hush money payouts, and non-disclosure agreements that were wielded like weapons. Court filings suggest some of these agreements may even surface during the trial, potentially exposing just how far the cover-ups went. And if that happens, the ripple effect could be seismic. We're talking about the possibility of implicating major executives, high-profile collaborators, and even whole companies that turned a blind eye as long as the profits kept rolling in. At this point, it's not just Diddy's reputation on trial, it's the entire infrastructure that propped him up.
Card.
What is that? What do you mean by that?
You give up your ability, your right to being a man. A man don't take it, a man gives it. So when you give up that man card, you don't get that back.
Are you saying what I think you're saying?
No, I'm saying what I'm saying.
And let's talk about the money trail. Prosecutors are already hinting that they're following it, and what they're uncovering could change the game. There are allegations of funds being funneled through shell companies, of payments disguised as business expenses, and of transactions that don't add up. It's the kind of financial web that raises more questions than answers. What was being paid for? Who was being paid off? And more importantly, how many layers of secrecy were built to protect the man at the center of it all? If the prosecution can untangle this web, it won't just strengthen their case. It'll expose a level of calculated deceit that's hard to fathom. But what makes it all the more disturbing is how normal it all seems in hindsight. Industry insiders are now reflecting on moments that felt off, but were brushed aside because, well, that's just how things worked. A last-minute meeting that no one could explain, a guest list that always seemed a little too curated, a vibe that shifted sharply depending on who was in the room. These weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a pattern that once you see it, you can't unsee it. And now, with this trial, forcing everyone to look closer, the cracks in the facade are becoming impossible to ignore.
That was all the people that went to the puffy parties. That was all the people that did all those things thinking that there was never going to be a consequence for what they were doing. Got punked out and pimped out by some greater desire. You shouldn't have a greater desire than being a man. So I believe that's a big problem with a lot of the actors out there because they get fluid. And next thing you know, once you go fluid,
What's even more unsettling is the sheer number of people who seemed complicit, or at least willfully blind to what was happening. High-profile friends, industry executives, even security teams, all of them played their roles in maintaining the facade. Some are now claiming they had no idea what was really going on behind closed doors, but how much of that is true, and how much is just self-preservation now that the empire is crumbling? It's hard to believe that no one saw the red flags, especially when you consider the breadcrumbs that have been there for years. Case in point, the infamous 2016 incident involving Diddy and Cassie Ventura. While the leaked footage is damning on its own, it turns out it's just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Court filings suggest that this wasn't an isolated outburst, but part of a long-standing pattern of behavior. Multiple witnesses have described similar incidents, moments of rage that left those around him too scared to speak up. And it's not just about physical confrontations. There are allegations of psychological games, of trust being weaponized, of people being pushed to their breaking point simply because he could. It's the kind of behavior that thrives in silence, and for years, that silence was deafening.
No, I get it. So you see some guys struggling with that. You see Bieber struggling with that. You see some of these guys struggling with that.
They can't get it out of their head. They can't get it out of their head.
But now, the floodgates are open, and the ripple effects are being felt far beyond the courtroom. The entertainment industry, long criticized for its culture of excess and exploitation, is being forced to reckon with its role in enabling figures like Diddy. How many deals were signed, how many partnerships were formed, all while whispers of his behavior swirled in the background? And more importantly, how many people turned a blind eye because the money was just too good to walk away from? These are questions that extend far beyond one man. They're questions about an entire system that prioritizes profit over accountability. And speaking of accountability, let's talk about the legal team that's fighting tooth and nail to keep Diddy out of prison. It's a who's who of high-powered attorneys, each with their own playbook for dismantling the prosecution's case. Their strategy is clear: muddy the waters, question the motives of the accusers, and frame Diddy as the victim of a media frenzy. They've already hinted at plans to call character witnesses, to bring in experts who can speak to his so-called alternative lifestyle, and to argue that what might look like exploitation was actually consensual. It's a risky move, one that could either sway the jury or backfire spectacularly.
Did you ever have the opportunity where you got invited and you said no to it?
Hell yeah.
What was the consequences when you said no?
Puffy invited me for weeks, asking me to come and teach him how to, wanted me to be his acting coach for a while. Go there and he's sitting around just looking. I'm like, okay, what's the material you want to work on? He's just looking at me.
And yet, for all their efforts, the prosecution isn't backing down. They've built a case that's not just about individual incidents, but about a pattern. A methodical, deliberate series of actions that paint Diddy as someone who wielded his power without restraint. They're leaning heavily on the testimonies of those who've come forward, and they're prepared to confront the defense's narrative head-on. This isn't just about winning a trial, it's about sending a message that no one, no matter how rich or powerful, is above the law. As the trial continues, the stakes couldn't be higher. For Diddy, it's not just his freedom that's on the line. It's his legacy, his empire, his place in cultural history. For the accusers, it's a chance to reclaim their voices, to stand up against a man who they say took so much from them. And for the rest of us, it's a stark reminder of the cost of unchecked power and the importance of holding even the most untouchable figures accountable.
Will you help me? I want to hear your music. So I come over there and I play the music, and he's sitting there just looking at me, like waiting. Okay. So then my assistant was like, he wants to hang out with you next week. And I was like, for what? He's like, I think he's trying to you. That's what my assistant said. And I was like, oh, okay. Now I get it. So now no more communication.
But here's the thing. This trial might be the headline now, but the questions it raises will linger long after the verdict is read. How do we balance the art with the artist? How do we reconcile the man who gave us some of the most iconic moments in music with the allegations that threaten to overshadow it all? And most importantly, what does justice look like in a world where power and privilege so often tip the scales? Let us know what you think down below. Are we watching the fall of an icon or the rise of a reckoning that's long overdue? This story is far from over, and trust us, you're going to want to stay tuned. Until next time, we'll see you in the next one.